something broke last night, and it was obviously something very important. We found out last night that the NDP and the Liberals were meeting secretly, and they've cooked up a backroom deal that would see Justin Trudeau get the majority power that he tried desperately to get last fall in the last election, but he failed to get. This deal means that Canadians have woken up to, in essence, an NDP Liberal majority government. And I think we have to let that sink in. This is an NDP Liberal government, and they have the majority. 82% of voters did not vote for a Liberal NDP government, including millions of Liberal voters. These Canadians woke up this morning to the fact that they have been hoodwinked and they've been deceived by their Prime Minister. Now, let me be clear, this is nothing more than a Justin Trudeau power grab. He is desperately clinging to power. His number one goal, as we have seen over the course of the last 6 years, is always to do what's best for him, not to do what's best for Canadians. Now, make no mistake, the NDP are in charge. What does this mean? Well, it means the decimation of Canadian oil and gas and LNG, which we know this more than ever. That means that is really a way to prop up Putin and Russia. When the NDP Liberal government phase out, which means destroy Canadian oil, gas, and LNG, they are helping Russia. And that was one of the top priorities they had, and that Justin Trudeau has agreed to. It means mining, agriculture, fisheries are all next under the extreme policies of the NDP, which are now Liberal policies. It also means $214 billion, just that we know of, in new spending for Canadians. And that's who's going to be spending. That's who's going to be bearing the brunt of the new NDP Liberal government. All of which for Canadians means more debt, more inflation, more jobs lost, more uncertainty, and frankly, more polarization. This is not a good day for Canadians. I'm here to say that we, Conservatives, are still conservative. We have not changed. We are still here to fight for Canadians. And Canadians can count on Conservatives to be consistently conservative. We are the party of less government spending. We are the party of low taxes. We are champions of Canadian natural resources. We are champions for Canadian farmers, for Canadian small businesses, for Canadian workers. We are champions for Canadian families. We are champions for Canadian taxpayers. And we are here to help Canadians save money. Canadians, millions of Canadians this morning, I think, are in need of hope. Canadians are waking up to this NDP Liberal government. They are, many of them, in shock. There is, I'm sure, a lot of despair in the West right now around this decision. And so we are going to spend the next little while reaching out to millions of Canadians, including those who have not voted Conservative, to let them know that we will continue to be their voice here in Ottawa. And we will do everything we can to hold this NDP Liberal government to account, including speaking directly to Liberal MPs who I'm sure did not tell their constituents that they would now be part of an NDP Liberal government.
Conservatives are going to have some opportunities, I suppose, to work with the Liberals if they want over the next 4 years. Do Conservatives support the new dental care program this deal is going to be getting Canadians, starting with kids 12 and under?
The NDP Liberal government, which are now telling Canadians this morning, are going to be introducing a national dental program is something that is going to cost Canadians billions of dollars. Many Canadians already have insurance that their private insurance they're paying for with their employer and have dental coverage. Canadians did not vote for a national dental program, and they certainly did not vote for an NDP Liberal government. So I would tell you that Conservatives will consistently stand up for the taxpayer. We will consistently stand up for good policy that actually provides Canadians with the best options when it comes to dental coverage, pharmacare coverage. We think there certainly are Canadians that need help, and provinces are providing help, and we'd like to see Canadians who are lower income and need that kind of assistance assistance have that assistance. But that was not what Canadians voted for just a few short months ago. They did not vote for an NDP Liberal government that would be spending billions of dollars in new spending.
Do you believe Conservatives are going to be fighting Justin Trudeau as the Liberal leader come the next election?
I have no idea. That will be up to Justin Trudeau to answer. I do know this, we are fighting an NDP Liberal majority government right now.
Ms. Bergen, David Baxter with Global News. You mentioned trying to reach out to some Liberals who you feel may be unsatisfied with this. Would you be starting with some of the Liberal MPs who stood against the imposition of the Emergencies Act?
I think we'll see. I mean, this is new. We'll have to see how some of these Liberals respond to questions that we pose, questions that their own constituents will have. But I cannot imagine that all Liberals are comfortable with this. There are many Liberals that are, fiscally responsible. There are obviously many millions of Liberal voters, I believe, who are fiscally responsible, that support Canadian natural resources, that support Canadian having investment grow in Canada. There are a lot of Liberals that are coming to me and saying they're very worried about the economic direction under a Justin Trudeau government. I cannot imagine this morning how they are feeling knowing that we now have a Jagmeet Singh led, because he's basically going to be the Deputy Prime Minister. This is a formal written agreement. We now have a NDP Liberal government in charge. So I am fairly certain there are literally millions of Liberal voters, including some Liberal members of Parliament, who have got to be very concerned this morning.
And now, looking at the past election result, approximately 50% of the vote went either the Liberals or the NDP. We see these partnerships show up in other countries where we do have multiple parties making up parliaments. Last time we saw an agreement like this in Canada was within the BC provincial government. There it still seemed like the NDP were very much driving the ship there. What indication is there beyond just like this initial announcement that Jagmeet Singh is going to play such a pivotal role in the future direction over the next 4 years?
I think the announcement we heard this morning is very clear. Justin Trudeau has basically said what I told Canadians I would do 3, 4, 5 months ago in the election. I've changed my mind because I actually want to feel and know that I have a majority power. And so I will do basically anything the NDP asks me to do in order to keep that power. I think that is proof enough. And I mean, we already have seen Trudeau in his policy move further and further to the left. This is a man who wasn't joking when he said he doesn't think about monetary policy. This is a man that was not joking when he says he admires China's basic dictatorship. He admires very left, very extreme ways of governing and governance. And so when he has now formed a formal agreement with the NDP government, with the NDP party, who is now basically the government, he has deceived Canadians. And I think there's got to be a lot of concern, not just with Canadians, but with Liberal voters themselves. What lengths will this man go to cling to power?
I don't know if
Did you want to repeat it in English, please?
No, just if you want to add something about that, but perhaps just on fiscal responsibility, if you just want to have comment on the deficit or the fiscal forecast that is ahead with this deal. What's your take on that?
We're as Conservatives, we are very, very concerned with the deficit and the fact that now having an NDP Liberal government means the deficit will be even more out of control than it is. I think Canadians and Canadian businesses, Canadian job creators, Canadian families have to be looking at this and recognizing inflation. There is no hope of inflation getting under control. I know we had hoped as Conservatives we could encourage the Liberal government to maybe step back from their increased taxation that was going to happen on April 1st, even the increased carbon tax. We know that there's some beliefs around the carbon tax helping the environment. We have questions around that, but we at this point had hoped that maybe we could encourage yesterday's Liberal government to reduce taxes for Canadians. Now that we have an NDP Liberal government, I would say there is no hope of reduced taxes. There is no hope of seeing any control of the spending. It is, I think, a very dire situation for Canadians.
Last question, dernière question.
Madame Bergen,
Are we seeing a movie that we've seen in the past? 1972, Pierre Trudeau also had a deal with the NDP for 2 years to maintain in power, and Mr. Trudeau is doing the same thing with the NDP. Is this back to the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was thinking even more of the coalition in Ontario and the NDP Liberal coalition and what happened to Ontario and the disaster that was. So we haven't seen quite as formal a signed agreement. I think this is very new and certainly new in recent history. So, the concerning part is we asked questions. Our former leader, Aaron O'Toole, was very clear saying there's going to be a coalition, and you will recall he was mocked and laughed at, and it will never happen. We woken up this morning, we went to bed last night knowing this not only was possibly happening this morning, we've heard the announcement, we saw the Prime Minister stand up and say that they've been talking, they've had secret deals they weren't telling anyone about. No one knew they were doing this. In the midst of, we've got a war going on in Ukraine, we had the Emergencies Measures Act that was declared, backed by the NDP. One has to wonder, when did these talks start? What kind of agreements were made? What was the quid pro quo that was given? These are important questions that go to the very heart of our democracy. Democracy and openness has been replaced by backroom deals. And so this is certainly about fiscal challenges and the fear of what this will do to the economy of the country. But I believe it goes to the heart of our democracy. The Liberals and the NDP had and have an obligation to be honest and transparent and tell Canadians this is what they've been cooking up. And they didn't do that. They cannot be trusted. These parties cannot be trusted. Neither of these men can be trusted to do what's best for the country. So a lot of implications. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to get to work doing that.